Fish. Is that all right?
Whatever you see is perfectly all right, Lloyd.
I also see a whole uncountable galaxy of stars. Can I say fish among the stars?
Just say what you see, Lloyd. Shall we try the next card?
A dolphin leaping. A cow rampant. Which is ridiculous. How can there be a rampant cow?
Let's try the next card.
A drum. A trumpet. A flute. A violin with broken string. No, not broken. Cut with a knife.
Found hanging in here. Point down. A hunting knife.
Do you think he put the knife in there to hide it?
No. He threw it at one of the girls and missed.
Are you satisfied it was Lloyd Wasson?
Well, we know he came to the campfire that evening, talked to the girls for a while, and left. Around 10:30, one of the girls went over to the Park General Store, Margaret Watkins. While she was gone, somebody came, tied up the other 3 girls, right in their sleeping bags, gagged them, and went around methodically, stabbing them all to death. Margaret says it was Lloyd Wasson. She saw him when she came back, you see. And of course, we know the knife was his.
Mr. Ellis, what does the district attorney's office think of a man who would do something like this?
The monster of the century as far as Muscopequa County is concerned.
I'm not talking about the tide of public emotion.
Oh, you're talking professionally.
Hmm.
Well, Lloyd Wasson is being examined by 3 court-appointed psychiatrists. They'll tell me what to think, professionally, Mr. Caldwell. By the way, is Clinton Judd going to be associated with you in this case?
Not yet. I flew up here because it seems I'm the only lawyer that Lloyd knows. And the way that he knows me is that we were classmates at college.
Do you know him very well?
No, nobody knew him that well. He was too peculiar.
Mr. Ellis, message for you.
Excuse me.
The report is in. Wasson found competent.
Thank you. Your friend is competent to stand trial.
Don't you know in your bones he should be given psychiatric treatment, not punishment?
Mr. Caldwell, there's nothing I can do. He's got to be tried, and if convicted, punished.
No, you left something out. Tried and defended. You haven't convicted him yet.
Judd, for the defense.
Oh, come on, Lloyd. You must have some recollection of where you were between 10:30 and 11:30 that night.
What night was that?
You don't know what night I'm talking about.
Mr. Judd, I will trade my very clear memory of that night for just a few minutes of quiet to finish a chapter. Please.
Yeah.
Bring that over.
approximately 10 o'clock on the night in question, I went for a long walk through the woods alone. That's not illegal or immoral. And it certainly isn't fattening.
Isn't much of an alibi, either.
Lloyd, what is that you're writing?
My book, A History of the United States, since 1954.
1954? Why pick that year?
It was a turning point. Well, if you don't know why, read my book. It covers everything. The real world, the unreal world, the rivers, the streams, the air, bird life, animal life, including lawyers. You're putting me on. And if I am, it's only because I may not live long enough to finish my book. Will I, Mr. Judd?
Lloyd, the prosecution claims that your knife was found at the scene of the crime. Is that correct?
Well, the knife is mine. I bought it at the swap shop for 98 cents because there was a nick in the blade. They can trace it to me.
How did it get into those bushes?
You'll have to ask the person who stole it from me.
The knife was stolen. When?
On the same day those girls were killed, someone got into my shack.
Did the thief take anything else?
Yes. A frying pan, a box of matches, and 6 of my best trout flies. A Dusty Miller, a Royal Coachman, Lloyd! Well, Black Nut!
Do you have any recollection of killing those girls?
Well, I have had a little trouble remembering certain things. The psychiatrists have been after me about brain damage.
There are 2 severe blows to the head mentioned here. One as a result of falling off a wall when you were 6.
The other was self-inflicted.
How?
My mother used to lock me in a storeroom when I upset her. It stank with pickling odors. So, one time when she was slamming the door, I put my head in the way. The remorse. Indescribable.
Mr. Judd.
Oh, Dr. Farnsworth. Excuse me, Lloyd.
Lloyd? Lloyd, do you remember visiting the psychiatrist when we were in college?
I didn't visit him, he visited me. I think because I hit somebody, I think. Didn't I?
Yes, an instructor. And you couldn't remember why.
But a thing like this, I mean, stabbing 3 innocent girls, I would certainly remember that if I did it. And I don't remember anything of the kind, which means I didn't do it, Ben. I swear to you I didn't. Now, you believe me, don't you?
You can spot paranoia in his whole relationship with his mother, and the tests show schizoid tendencies.
And he's a sick boy. Then whatever his sickness drove him to do, he couldn't stop himself. He couldn't help doing it.
Well, that's correct. But you and I know there's a rule of law, the McNaughton rule. If he knew right from wrong, he's legally responsible.
And what should we do? We sane people. Should we kill him?
Well, if it were up to me, I'd have him committed. Now, what more do you want me to tell you?
Just tell me if you're willing to say that on the witness stand.
Yes. So would any psychiatrist.
Lloyd, I'm willing to represent you if we can agree on this basis for your defense. You were not responsible for your actions.
Not responsible. But that means insanity. I am not insane. I'm innocent. I won't be defended on insanity. Then even if I win, I lose. They'll put me in an institution.
Lloyd, I've got to go back to Houston now. But I'll come up again in plenty of time for your trial if I can defend you my way.
No, I won't agree. No. No! and fight everyone else and you too. God help me. Do it your way.
Lloyd, if I could argue the facts in court, I would. But there are no facts that help you.
But there are, Mr. Judd. So when I visited Lloyd and he told me you said there were no facts on his side, I thought the mountain had better come to Mohammed. Lloyd has no family, and as for his friends, poor boy, well, I guess I'm it.
I think Lloyd is pretty lucky to have a friend who would come all the way to Houston for him, Miss Howell.
Well, I can't take all that credit. I had to be in Dallas. I'm lecturing tonight. Possibly you didn't catch my full name, Elspeth Hanno.
Oh, yes, Miss Hanno. You lecture on psychic phenomena.
Yes, for the Boston Institute of Parapsychology. I have a cottage in Musquepequa. That's where Lloyd and I first gravitated together. Two oddballs consoling each other. Mr. Judd, he didn't kill those girls. The man who did is a Canadian.
Really?
The state park is very close to the border, you know. The man crossed over that night. I don't know his name, but I can tell you he's from Quebec, and his language is French.
How do you know this?
Well, to begin with, Lloyd wasn't at the state park when the crime was committed. He was in my cottage.
Miss Hanno, why didn't you come forward with this sooner?
Well, I didn't realize until he told me.
He didn't tell me.
He was afraid you wouldn't believe him, especially since I wasn't there at the time.
If you weren't there, Miss Hanno, how do you know Lloyd was there?
He helped himself to a very generous portion of chicken captain, which is a dish I whip up for him because he loves it. And he drank a bottle of beer, which I keep in stock for him. That's one way I know he was there.
Well, if there's a more conclusive way, let's talk about that.
I had a clear and graphic vision of Lloyd Wasson sitting in my kitchen, eating my chicken captain and drinking my beer. His beer, I can't afford the calories.
A vision? You mean you didn't actually see him? You had a psychic impression of some sort?
Of the very strongest kind.
And may I ask whether your statement that the killer is a Canadian is also based on the same kind of vision?
Yes, it is. He spoke French, and he was wearing a red plaid shirt.
Miss Hanno, I'm sure that in your audience tonight there will be a lot of people who believe in you, who accept your extrasensory power, but there is no way in this skeptical world of ours that I can present it as evidence in a court of law. Thank you very much for your trouble in coming.
I expected you to say that, Mr. Judd. Oh, but thank you. I'm very easily made fun of. But it's a strange thing about a vision. It simply will not go away.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the defendant's two-part plea. Not guilty, and not guilty by reason of insanity. Part one means that the prosecution must prove beyond any reasonable doubt that he did this terrible thing. Part two means that even if such proof is presented, you must consider whether Lloyd Wasson was responsible for his actions. The ruling of the Sanity Board that he is now capable of standing trial has nothing whatsoever to do with his state of mind at the time of the crime. A crime, ladies and gentlemen, which consisted of stabbing to death in methodical order 3 defenseless girls immobilized in sleeping bags. An act without motive, without reason, beyond comprehensibility. You must ask yourselves again and again, could a sane man have done such a frightful thing?
Yes, sir. I've heard the testimony from the previous witnesses. Including the testimony of Sergeant Edwards to the effect that you and he were the arresting officers in this case? Yes, sir. Now, Officer Blake, I will ask you this. Are you certain that the man you found near the scene of the crime shortly after the crime took place was the same man as the defendant? Yes, sir. It's the same man. Thank you. Defense may cross-examine.
Officer, how would you describe the behavior of the defendant while he was in your custody?
Pretty level-headed, just quiet and cooperative.
Had you told him the nature of the crime he was accused of?
Yes, sir.
Officer, if a level-headed man, a thinking, a sane man were accused of such an awful crime, would he be just quiet and cooperative?
Objection. That calls for a conclusion.
Sustained.
Officer, how would you describe the physical appearance of the defendant when you stopped him?
Tan shirt, blue jeans, canvas shoes, if that's what you mean.
I mean bloodstains, Mr. Blake. Did you see any bloodstains on him?
No, we didn't.
No bloodstains. And yet you assumed this man had repeatedly stabbed 3 persons?
We assumed he changed his clothes, at least his shirt.
Well, what reason did you have to make such an assumption?
Well, the description that came over the radio, he was wearing a red shirt. When we spotted him, he was wearing a tan.
Just a minute. What color shirt was he first described as wearing?
A red shirt. Red plaid.
Thank you. No further questions.
May it please the court, the prosecution calls Margaret Watkins.
Janie Farmer, Gloria Goldsmith, Betsy Egerton, and I. We were on our way home from Montreal, and when we got this far, our car broke down.
And while your car was being fixed, you slept in the state park how many nights?
2. And then on the 3rd night, we were sitting around the fire, and this man came up to us. He said hello, and how good the coffee smelled. All very nice. So we gave him a cup.
Do you see that man in this courtroom? Indicating the defendant? All right, now, Margaret, would you tell us what took place around that campfire?
Conversation. He seemed interested in Betsy's career. She modeled a little. I mean, she modeled. Then he asked her if the photographers ever got fresh. And she said not really. Although once she wanted a soccer man. After a while, he said thanks for the coffee, and he went away. And then about 10:30, I was drafted to go to the general store in the park. It was my turn. And when I came back, I saw him. And he was going from one sleeping bag to the other, bending over with his arm going up and down. And I said, what could he be doing? And then I saw the knife in his hand.
Oh, Margaret, what did you do then?
I screamed or something. I don't know. Anyway, he saw me, and he threw the knife at me. But it missed, and so I turned, and I ran, and I didn't stop running until I got to the door.
Margaret, this man that you saw stabbing your friends, was this the same man who sat at your campfire drinking your coffee, the man you've identified in this courtroom as the defendant?
It was the same man.
You may cross-examine.
Margaret, how do you know it was the same man?
I saw him. And I
What did she say to you?
Nothing to me. But while he was stabbing them, he muttered.
What did he mutter?
Words. Just words. Like... hooray. And career. And soccer man.
Margaret, what sense do those words make?
They could make sense. Because of the conversation that he had with Betsy about her modeling career.
Just a moment, please. Ben, how's your French?
Nowhere as good as yours. Why?
Could those words make any more sense in French than they do in English?
What makes you think they're French?
Your Honor, I ask for a recess.
For what reason, Your Honor?
For the reason that I may have been mistaken in pleading my client not guilty on the basis of insanity. Your Honor, I may wish to take the admittedly dangerous step of withdrawing my client's plea not guilty by reason of insanity and basing our entire case on the defense that my client is, in fact, not guilty at all. Were you at Elspeth's cottage that night, or weren't you?
I was. Yes, I was.
Well, why didn't you tell me so in the first place?
I don't know. I didn't remember. I probably had a headache. Besides, it makes me sick to think of lapping up her chicken captain ad infinitum, ad nauseum.
She says you love it.
I had to love it! I'm sorry. I had to love it. Otherwise, I wouldn't get anything to eat on those occasions when I happened to be starving. Now, do you understand my whole relationship with Elspeth Hanno? The old bat.
What about the red plaid shirt?
I never owned a red shirt. I wouldn't own one. You should know that.
How should I know it?
Because I told you about my mother locking me in the storeroom, didn't I?
What has the storeroom got to do with a red plaid shirt?
It was full of pickled beets.
All right. Ben, I had my own vision. A vision of our defense. 2 or 3 psychiatrists testifying that Lloyd has paranoia with schizoid tendencies. Now, what would that mean?
Well, it would mean that if he did commit the crime, he was no more responsible than a cat for catching a bird. If he killed, it was the mental illness that forced him to do it.
Then up comes the prosecution with 2 or 3 more psychiatrists to testify that he knew right from wrong. So according to that 19th century concept, the McNaughton rule, he was legally sane.
Well, Clint, you knew that before we went to trial.
Yeah, but I didn't know there was another way to defend him.
And now you see a way?
Defend on the facts. And the trouble is, it's so risky, I don't know if I have the right to do it.
Why don't you ask me? I'm with Mussolini. Remember him? He said, live dangerously. I understand your new attack. Let's go for broke, right?
Right.
If we lose, I hang, or whatever they do to people in this state. But if we win, I'm home free. Okay, let's take the risk.
Lloyd, we'll have to reach another agreement.
I agree.
Now, listen to me first. Lloyd, I'm not going to turn you loose on society if I can help it.
You said I didn't kill those girls.
I said it's possible you didn't kill them. But one thing is dead certain, you're a sick man. Now, if I get you acquitted, Lloyd, I want you to agree to commit yourself voluntarily for treatment. Will you promise me that?
Mr. Judd, I'm innocent. Why should I be locked up like a criminal?
I kept telling myself not even Clint and Judd would have the nerve to try a stunt like
Miss
this.
Hanno, would you please tell the court how long you've known the defendant, Lloyd Watson?
3 years, since I bought my summer cottage up here.
And during that time, did he visit you at your cottage?
Yes, frequently.
Was this friendship related to your activities with psychic phenomena, or was it more related to your activities at the kitchen stove?
The kitchen stove and the refrigerator.
Now, Miss Hanno, to your knowledge, when was the last time Lloyd Watson visited your cottage?
On the night the girls were killed.
And can you tell the court at what time he was in your cottage on that night?
From about 10:30 until shortly before midnight.
Then is it your testimony that Lloyd could not have been at the campsite at the time those girls were killed?
Yes.
Objection. Counsel is leading his witness.
I withdraw the question. I'm sure this jury knows local geography well enough to draw its own conclusion. Mr. Ellis, you may cross-examine.
Miss Hanno, we have had testimony from Officer Blake that the defendant told him the friend he went to visit was not at home. Did you hear that testimony?
Yes, I heard it.
Well, if you were not there at the time, how can you testify the defendant was?
I don't suppose missing food would convince you. A special chicken.
No, ma'am. Not even missing caviar would convince me.
Well, then I guess I'll have to tell you why I really know Lloyd was there.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him in a vision.
Miss Hanno, we are dealing here with the most frightful crime in local memory. Now, I do not know if you have just committed near perjury or incredible foolishness. Do you really expect a jury of intelligent men and women to acquit this defendant on the ridiculous basis of a psychic vision?
Object.
I don't really know how to answer that question.
Please don't bother, Miss Hanno. I'm certain the jury can answer it for themselves. You may step down.
Not yet, if it please the court. I would like a redirect examination of this witness. Miss Hanno, would you tell us something about your psychic ability?
Well, I've been called in by police departments 8 separate times to help in cases they couldn't solve by ordinary means.
With what results?
In 3 cases, I found missing bodies. In 2 cases, I found clues which led to arrests and convictions. In 3 cases, I was of no material help.
And do you feel that you can be of material help in this case?
Yes. I can describe the man who stabbed those girls. He was a man of about 30. Dark hair, brown eyes. Not very tall, but very strong. He weighed about 165 pounds. He crosses the border very frequently. He's a Canadian from Quebec. His language is French. He was wearing a red plaid shirt when he stabbed those girls. Afterwards, he took it off and buried it.
Can you tell us where he buried it?
No. No, I'm sorry. I wish I could.
Miss Hanno, how would you compare this vision for strength and clarity with visions that were successful in solving other crimes?
This one is as strong as the best I've ever had, or stronger. I'd stake my reputation on it.
Thank you. Does the prosecution wish to cross-examine?
No questions.
You may step down. That's all, Miss Hanno. Are you all right?
I see it now.
You see what?
I see red. Clay. Red plaid. Redder blood.
Are you speaking of the killer's shirt?
Buried.
Buried where?
At the point of an arrow.
What kind of arrow?
Let me alone! Pointed arrow. A painted arrow. On a sign. A sign. At the south end of the park.
Your Honor, I know this is unusual, but it's not without precedent. In view of the fact that a man is on trial for his life, I ask the court to order that a search be made.
You've got to be kidding.
You are kidding, I hope.
Relax, Ben. Believe me, when I put Elsbeth on the stand, I had no idea she was going to pull a vision about the shirt.
Well, then why did you put her on?
To establish another theory of the crime. The Canadian killer. Perfectly legitimate strategy if we can follow up with bona fide evidence.
Mr. Ellis? I conducted a search of the specified area and found this red plaid shirt.
Did you cause any laboratory tests to be made on the shirt?
Yes, sir. I was given this report. Stains are of human blood, types A and O, parentheses. Note that of the murder victims, 1 had type A, 2 had type O.
Is there an estimate of the length of time the shirt had been buried?
Yes, sir. Buried in high clay composition soil for approximately 2 months. Parentheses. Note that the above crime took place 9 weeks ago.
Does the prosecution or the defense wish to question this witness?
No questions.
One question, Your Honor. Sergeant, is there a label on that shirt naming the store where it was purchased?
Yes, sir. Dubuchet AC, Quebec.
Indicating the killer is Canadian from the French-speaking province of Quebec.
Objection. Highly speculative, Your Honor. Anyone can buy a shirt in any store.
I almost think my history of the United States should begin much later than 1954. Say, the day I met you.
That's no landmark event.
It is for me. I'm trying to tell you in a rather self-conscious way how much I appreciate what you're doing for me. I'll keep our bargain, Mr. Judd.
Good. Now maybe you'll trust me enough to do something else for me. Tell me what's so special about 1954.
That was the year of my emancipation.
Really? What happened?
My father came home, and he did 3 very impressive things. 1, he beat up my mother. 2, he stole all my savings. 3, he disappeared again.
How did that emancipate you?
It showed me the great value.
Clinton, excuse me. Mr. Clinton Judd, Etienne Lenouvelle.
How do you do?
Pleasure to meet you, mister.
I'm glad to see you.
I'm awfully sorry the plane was late, but we got held up at the Quebec airport.
Will you state your name and occupation, please?
My name is Etienne Lenouvelle. My occupation is customs officer.
Would you tell the court, Mr. Lenouvelle, how you came to be involved in this case?
Well, I had read about it, of course, and when I heard on the radio that there was a French-Canadian aspect, I telephoned you and offered to be of whatever help I could.
And how do you feel that you can help in this case, Mr. Lenouvelle?
I've been in the park many times for the landlocked salmon fishing. On the day before the crime, I had a brief encounter with the girls. They stopped at my camper, and we chatted briefly, and they asked me for the name of a good restaurant in town.
And what exactly did you tell them?
My exact words?
Your exact words.
Il n'y a pas de bons restaurants, mais j'en connais un duquel on peut dire ça va, ça marche.
Will you translate, please?
Well, there aren't any good ones, but I know of one you could say it's pretty much okay.
Why did you speak French to them?
Because they spoke French to me. They were studying French, and they got a kick out of speaking it. They told me they practiced on several of us.
Several of whom?
Canadians in the state park who spoke French.
Do the words hooray, career, soccer man, could they mean anything in French?
Well, let me put it this way. They sound something like French, at least to a person who isn't too familiar with French inflection. For example, there's a saying, il vaut mieux pleurer que rire. Pleurer que rire, hooray que rire.
And soccer man?
Soccer man, a lady's handbag.
May it please the court, the defense rests.
I know how my book ends. We live. We are not obliterated by the bomb. Humanity survives.
Yeah, well, just don't forget the agreement. You know you're going to commit yourself for treatment.
On one condition.
What?
Stake me to a new shirt. I can't go to a psychiatrist in a torn shirt. Come on, Ben, I'm kidding.
Well, just the same, you got a deal.
Next, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the question of the knife used in this terrible crime. Can we be sure, absolutely sure, that knife was not stolen from Lloyd Wasson's shack? And then there's the question of the shirt. Purchased in Canada, buried far, far away from the point at which he was apprehended. Can we be sure that shirt was worn by Lord Wasson? There's also the question of the critical words: hooray, career, soccer man. Can we be sure those words were not spoken by someone other than the defendant, a man whose language is French? And finally, there is the question of the testimony of Margaret Watkins, a frightened girl. And I say this in full compassion. A girl trying to penetrate her blinding emotions to remember the face of a killer she saw by moonlight. Can we be sure that she is not making a terrible mistake? In fact, what is there in the prosecution's entire case that we can be sure of? Ladies and gentlemen, Lloyd Wasson's defense is not based on the psychic powers, such as they may be, of Elspeth Hanno. It is based on the solid principle of reasonable doubt. If we have established in your minds a reasonable doubt that Lloyd Wasson is the only man who could have committed this crime, then you must forget its deeply horrifying nature. You must forget the shocked reaction of your community. You must forget the perfectly human desire to see someone, anyone, possibly the wrong man, punished. And you must find Lloyd Wasson not guilty.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will now retire to consider your verdict. Court will be in recess until such time as the verdict is reached.
Judge, what do you think the verdict will be?
No comment, gentlemen. Let's wait for the jury.
Mr. Wasson, what are your writings there? Lloyd, what do you think the verdict will be?
Who are you?
Kavanaugh, City Sentinel.
I wanted to know about my book.
Gilbert Rameau, Journal de Québec.
Ah oui? C'est un peu d'une comédie humaine, moderne, ce qu'il est arrivé aux États-Unis depuis 1954.
C'est une grandeur, ça, n'est-ce pas?
Ah oui, mais ça se peut. Lloyd, excuse us.
Fellas,
Lloyd, you didn't tell us you spoke French.
What are you talking about? I don't speak French.
It's dinner time.
To me, it's panic time.
Take it easy.
Hello. Area code for Summit, Massachusetts, please.
Clint, why? Now, just because Lloyd speaks French doesn't wipe out every last reasonable doubt.
If you can be so calm about this, maybe you better make the call yourself.
To whom?
I don't know. I'm just hoping there's some record of the time his father beat up his mother. Maybe at the local newspaper, maybe at the hospital. Just find out everything you can about that father. Oh, Henry. Henry, I'd like to see that shirt again.
The shirt?
Yeah, the red plaid blood
Yeah,
stain.
I know. But the jury's out. What difference could it possibly make to your case now? If you don't mind a grudging compliment, I think you did too good a job on that jury.
Well, I may not disagree with you.
Well, why do you want to see the shirt?
Henry, I've said all I'm permitted to say to you. Now, I've got to see that shirt.
All right. It may take a little time. The jury sent for it. I'll ask the judge to have it brought to the courtroom.
Mr. Judd, do you want to see me?
I certainly do. How did you know?
I don't don't know how I know a lot of things.
Elsbeth, if you do it with mirrors, if your visions come out of a bag of tricks, tell me now before the jury returns with a verdict.
I'm not a fake, Mr. Judd. Whatever you might believe about me.
Can I believe what you tell me right now, Elsbeth?
So help me God.
Did you actually have a vision of Lloyd Wasson sitting in your kitchen when the crime was committed?
I did.
But did that vision come before you saw that some of your food was missing or after?
I don't understand you.
How much did Lloyd tell you about himself? Sitting in your kitchen over the past 3 years. Quite a bit, wasn't it?
Yes.
His comings and goings, his favorite places in the park.
Yes.
Did he ever say that if he wanted to hide something, he would bury it near the sign at the south side of the park?
No.
Are you sure that you didn't work this out for yourself from what he did tell you? Elsbeth, you're not a fake, but you are human. All of us have a need to sell the world on something special that we think we have. Isn't it possible that you have developed the fine art of putting together physical facts from insight, understanding, intuition, and calling this psychic vision?
Who are you to ask me that? I've been tested by scientists. I've been checked by institutes. What gives you the right to challenge me?
Elsbeth, this is not a challenge, but it is an admission. I admit that I've made an awful mistake. I may have turned an insane killer loose. I'm asking you to help me hold him back.
Lloyd speaks French, did he tell you?
No.
Are you sure you didn't figure it out for yourself? From what he told you about his father?
He told me very little about his father. He saw him very seldom. The last time when Lloyd was 15.
Did Lloyd tell you that his father was French-Canadian?
Did he tell you that?
Yes.
Okay, panic time. Well, how do you live with this? By the numbers, you get so many off, and one is bound to be a killer?
Not this kind of a killer. Insane, compulsive. You turn him loose, he's sure to kill again.
We can't even reveal this. Whatever we know about him is privileged.
Brother, when I make a mistake. I should have stayed with the plea of insanity. I should never have tried to defend on the facts, not for this client.
Clint, isn't there some chance the jury will find him guilty?
No, not enough. Ben, go see the judge. You'll probably find him in chambers.
What can I say to him? Not one single word against Lloyd.
Just tell him we want to consult with the client and can we have him brought to the council room, that's all. Is that what you brought me here to talk about? My book? You don't mind talking about your book, do you?
Of course not.
Now, in 1954, your father returned and he beat up your mother. And you considered this as a form of emancipation for you. Why is that, Lloyd?
Because it taught me not to admire that type of individual. My father was a colorful character. He worked in logging camps when he wanted to. Most of the time, he'd drink, carry on with women.
And this appealed to you?
Well, he was tough, independent, always had his way with women. That sort of thing appealed to one side of my undeveloped personality, if you understand that.
I understand it perfectly. This is what the psychiatrists call your schizoid tendency.
But in 1954, I rejected my father. I took my mother's name, Wasson. What my father's name was, I don't even care to remember.
Malraux. Albert Malraux.
How do you know that, Ben? I never mentioned it to you.
You say you rejected your father. But after you dropped out of college, you went to Canada. You worked in logging camps. You learned French.
I'm not aware of any such thing.
Lloyd Wasson may not be aware of it. But you are two different people.
Huh?
What's the other name? Malraux? It was Lloyd Wasson who chatted with those girls, who drank their coffee, and who never tried to touch one of them. But it was Malraux who came back later. Malraux who was used to having his way with women. Malraux who got violent when he was crossed. And it was Malraux who killed them.
Oh. You're all wrong, of course. But if I were this criminal, what do you imagine I would do about it now?
Lloyd, You're not a criminal. You're a sick man. And what you can do about it now is come with me to the judge and tell him you want to commit yourself voluntarily for treatment. Will you do that? Right now.
Mr. Judd, are you out of your mind?
Lloyd, that was our agreement.
I'm legally sane. In a little while, I'll be legally innocent. Why should I ask to have myself locked up?
Lloyd, you gave us your word.
Yes, but you say I'm a nut. Now, if you took the word of a nut, what does that make you?
Now, Lloyd, you know very well that there's nothing Ben and I can do about it. We're your lawyers. But Elspeth is not your lawyer.
Well, what can Elspeth do? She had a vision of the killer, an entirely different man. Did she take it back?
Yes, and before the verdict comes in.
But she'd be lying. She believes in her visions. Elspeth, are you going to go into court and stand up and say that you're a fake?
I'm not a fake. But there is a question about my visions, Lloyd. Whether I put them together from what I know, from what I get by intuition.
And you accept that, Elspeth?
You could have told me bit by bit enough about your feelings and your father so that my French-Canadian is only your other self. What does that mean?
He says he doesn't care.
Je vais te finir, toi, si tu veux bien. Regarde! Regarde!
Judd, you all right?
I think so.
Was this what you couldn't tell me about before?
Henry, I can't even tell you that. But there's nothing to keep you from telling the judge what you saw for yourself.
Right. Now I'll get you a doctor.
Thank you.
What is your name?
Louis Malraux.
Were you born in the United States?
No. Je suis né au Canada.
Do you understand what is happening here?
Yes. You're confusing me with someone called Lloyd Wasson, but that's only because I happen to be bilingual.
Be seated, please. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears to the court that the defendant is not competent to stand trial at this time. I therefore declare a mistrial. I thank you for your patient efforts. Defendant is remanded to the state mental facility at Greenbrook for re-examination and will remain committed to this institution until such time as he may be certified sane. Jury is dismissed. Court is adjourned.
You know something, Ben? I remember very clearly what a numbskull you were in college.
Well, Lloyd, nobody's perfect.
Never mind. You turned out pretty much okay. Mr. Judd, I'm thinking of devoting a whole chapter of my book to lawyers, if I could consult you on it.
Of course.
What I'm trying to say in my self-conscious way is that I wish you would come see me once in a while.
I'll do that, Lloyd. Take care now. Good luck.
Treatment, not punishment. Which was what we wanted for him from the start.
Next time, there's got to be an easier way.
Was this way worth it, Clint?
I would say so, yeah.
Considering how Lloyd said his book should end, remember? Humanity survives.